Here is a scary story based on the very real and well-documented events surrounding the Bell Witch, a poltergeist that terrorized the Bell family in rural Tennessee from 1817 to 1821. It's considered one of the most famous and well-documented cases of paranormal activity in American history. The Whisper from the Woods. The trouble didn't start with a scream, but with a dog. Not their dog, but a strange, gaunt creature with matted fur and eyes that reflected the firelight like hot coals. It would appear at the edge of the cornfield, just stare at the farmhouse, and then dissolve back into the shadows. John Bell, a pious and practical man, shot at it twice. The smoke would clear, and the dog would be gone, leaving no trace in the mud. That was the autumn of 1817. John's youngest son, Richard, started complaining of a strange creature in the corn, a beast with the body of a dog and the head of a hare. The adults dismissed it as a child's fancy, but soon the sounds began. It started at night, a scratching like claws on wood coming from the walls. Then a persistent gnawing on the posts of the beds. John would light a candle, and the noise would stop, only to resume the moment the flame was extinguished. It was as if the house itself was trying to chew its way out of existence. Then came the beating, a sound like someone slamming the stone walls of the cabin with a heavy oak club. The entire house would shudder. John and his sons would rush outside, lanterns held high, to find nothing, only the silent, watching woods. The physical assaults on the children began subtly. Betsy, John's spirited 12-year-old daughter, would be yanked from her bed by an invisible hand. She'd scream, and her brothers would see her being dragged across the floor, her nightgown bunching around her as if gripped by a fist no one could see. John Bell, a man who feared God and no other thing, began to look haggard. One night, as the family huddled in the main room, the scratching from the walls grew louder, more frantic. Then, for the first time, it spoke. It wasn't a voice from the air, but a faint, reedy whisper that seemed to come from the very planks of the floor, from the stones of the hearth. "Where's my child? You have my child," the whisper hissed. The family stared at each other, frozen. John Bell, his face pale, gripped his Bible tighter. "Who are you?" he demanded, his voice cracking. A silence stretched for an eternity. Then the whisper returned, clearer this time, a cold draft against their ankles. "I am a spirit. I was once someone's something. Now I am nothing. And I want John Bell's life." From that night on, the entity, which the neighbors and eventually the papers would call the Bell Witch, became a malevolent member of the family. It learned their secrets. It would sing hymns in a raspy, grating voice, then immediately follow with raunchy bar songs. It would repeat the sermons from church with a mocking, theatrical flair. It would fling objects across the room, candlesticks, plates, heavy iron pots, without ever touching them. The witch reserved its deepest cruelty for John Bell and his daughter Betsy. It would slap Betsy, leaving red welts on her cheeks. It would pull her hair and stick pins into her skin. For John, it was a campaign of slow, psychological torment. It would quote his private prayers back to him, twisting the words. It would whisper his most secret, shameful thoughts aloud for the whole family to hear. News of the haunting spread. General Andrew Jackson, a hero of the recent war and a future president, heard the tale and decided to investigate with a team of seasoned frontiersmen. As his wagon approached the Bell farm, one of his men swore he saw a strange, half-human creature leap from the woods and land on the wagon tongue. The horses froze, trembling violently, refusing to go another step. The team was stuck for an hour until, as suddenly as it appeared, the presence lifted. Jackson later famously said, "I'd rather fight the entire British Army than deal with the Bell Witch." The years dragged on. The family was trapped. They couldn't leave their prosperous farm, and they couldn't live in peace. John Bell's health began to fail. A mysterious affliction took hold, a paralysis of his tongue and a constant bitter taste in his mouth. The witch would cackle and claim responsibility, promising him a slow and painful end. On the morning of December 20th, 1820, John Bell was found on his bed, unconscious. On the nightstand was a small, empty vial made of dark, unfamiliar glass. His family had never seen it before. As they watched over him, the witch's voice filled the room, triumphant. "I have given John Bell a dose of poison that will kill him. He will never see the light of another day." He died that evening. At the exact moment of his death, a wild, discordant burst of sound erupted from the woods surrounding the farm. It was a chorus of shrieks and howls and manic, jubilant singing, the witch's farewell celebration. After John Bell was buried, the activity on the farm gradually subsided. The whispers faded, the scratches ceased. The witch was gone. But sometimes on a still Tennessee night, if you stand near the site of the old Bell farm, some say you can still hear it. Not a scream, but a faint, reedy whisper on the wind, as if the very soil remembers the spirit that once lived there, and the man whose life it stole.